Welcome to Smart Money Simplified with Brent Mekosh from the Wealth Stewards. In this podcast, Brent discusses some of the most important and interesting topics of the day as they relate to finance, the economy, and beyond. Now, on to the show.
And welcome to the Smart Money Simplified podcast with your host, Brent Mekosh. Brent, it's getting to be near the time when people are planning their vacations and taking time off and going places. But you know what I hate about going on vacation?
TSA, airports?
Yes, I do. I hate that with a passion, man. It is just flying used to be fun, and it's just not fun anymore, Brent. It's not fun anymore. So I'm trying to figure out how I go visit my sister in Colorado without getting, TSA'd, as it were.
Billy, it can be fun. It can be pretty amazing. I had the good fortune about a month or so ago, and this was with a friend of mine, so this was not necessarily my bird, but we got on a Bombardier Global Express in Scottsdale Airport, and 4.5 hours later landed directly at Norman Key in the Bahamas. And it's just, if you haven't flown private, and I'm really excited about today's conversation because I am a pilot, I'm an instrument rated pilot, but we're talking single engine Cessnas and things like that.
Oh.
But if you're a pilot, you love aviation, which we're going to talk about today. If you're flying and traveling frequently, as you said, there's a lot of hassles and a lot of hiccups that certainly can come from flying commercially. But if you haven't flown private, it is truly one of the great luxuries left in the world. Just arriving right at the jet. You just get on the plane. If you even fly internationally, you get off the plane, somebody from customs meets you at the plane, and you're through all this stuff in 5 or 10 minutes. And it is a very, very different world for sure. One that I've been fortunate enough to at least experience a couple times now. So I've got a really cool guest today, and we're going to talk about private jets and aviation and a lot of other topics. I have Brent Wouters, and he is CEO of JetLinks. And Brent, you've got really an amazing background, not just in aviation. A lot of it's aviation, but you were CEO of Cirrus Aircraft. And so for those that might be listening that are pilots out there, this is arguably the coolest 4-passenger airplane that you've got out there right now. And in many ways, one of the most advanced of its kind for sure. You're CEO of Iron Valley Supply. So like deep logistics background. You've got educational background in mathematics, physics, aerospace engineering. You got an MBA in finance. And what struck me on our talk together, getting ready for this podcast, was if there's like a Renaissance man, Brent, and I'm not talking about me, Brent, I'm talking about you, Brent, it is absolutely you. So I just really want to thank you for taking some time out of, I know what is a very busy schedule for you, and having this conversation for me. So give us a little other background that maybe I didn't share about how you got into this business and what you're doing now.
Well, I appreciate it. That's a nice introduction. And it is a busy time. Today is one of our busiest days of the year as it stands, because we're taking all those people to spring break locations that they want to be, or bringing them back, as it were. So we have several hundred flights today that are going around. So we're busy. But I've been very fortunate. I've worked with a lot of really great people on some great projects. But I started my aviation journey, if you will, flying in small airplanes with friends of friends, and flying airplanes before I had a license to do so. But and that kind of really started my career. I used to joke that I grew up racing motocross, so I started flying, but it was off of two wheels, so was
and not for as long either. There were shorter trips.
Exactly, shorter flights, but flights nonetheless. I loved to race, and I loved the thrill of it all, and I loved to fly through the air. So, but then I got into aviation really after my undergraduate degree, because I figured out that I loved airplanes, and I was looking at the Navy and the Air Force and things like that, but decided I wanted to go get a master's in aerospace engineering after I finished my math and physics degrees. So I just got right into it, and wanted to understand all the technology, wanted to understand the intricate details of aeronautics, and had a very good experience at Iowa State, where I was doing both computational fluid dynamics, which leveraged all of my software experience, plus doing some wind tunnel testing to validate some of my real mathematical work. So I got to put the theoretical and the computational work together with the empirical data, and create some mathematical equations for power companies and things like that to help them weather winter storms and ice conditions and things like that. So, it was an interesting background, but then I really figured out that I liked the going as much as I liked the airplanes. And so rather than going to the defense contractors, I went to Delta Airlines, had a great experience there, built flight simulators for years. So it gave me a really good exposure to safety and flight operations, as well as all the technical aspects of aerospace and the cockpit design, and took that into aircraft engineering. I took that into work on the F-22 program, building inventory management systems for the F-22 program, and ultimately went through, just before I came to Cirrus, I went through 5 or 6 years at an investment bank, part of Citigroup, and then got the good fortune to join Cirrus Aircraft in its very early days. Delivered 90 airplanes in early 2001, and then late 2001, and then spent 10 years there. It was quite a ride.
So I want to talk a little bit about Cirrus before we get into JetLinks. When you left the investment banking world to join Cirrus, now if you're a pilot, you know the name. It's a fantastic airplane. But at the time, there's probably a real serious question whether this company was going to make it. Did that seem like what was that jump like to you, coming from the relative stability anyway of the banking world into what was really a startup at that point?
Well, it was very much a startup. It was losing a lot of money. It was very much a venture deal with, trying to bring modern technology to a segment of the general aviation world that hadn't had any modern technology. So the product side was ripe for innovation and renewal, because most people were still flying the Cessnas, the 172s. They a lot of round dial instruments, and none of the technologies that we put in flight simulators, none of the the flat panel screens, none of the software that you could bring to bear had been brought to the the small end of the general aviation world. So the product side was ripe for innovation. As with any aviation company, it's a very, very difficult process, lots of regulations, a lot of capital investment, a very long time to develop those kinds of things. And so it was losing tens and tens of millions of dollars. It was very much a risk. But I took the risk based on, it was just a tremendous challenge. I got the good fortune to work with a couple other really good people from, that had, experience in other industries that brought, sort of Toyota manufacturing capabilities to bear, brought great sales experience. And so a couple of us really were able to both innovate the product and then really scale up the production fairly quickly and start to grow both in the United States and eventually around the world.
Now, with your logistics background, I've been down on the line where they build 172s and 182s in Kansas, and it's really cool to see that. But logistically and then I definitely want to talk about JetLinks, but is building the Cirrus, is it a different process? I've been to the Diamond plant up in Ontario as well, which is a lot different than the Cessna plant. What was it like building the Cirrus?
Well, it's very complex. Each airplane includes, 21 and 2,200 parts overall. You're producing, not only composite parts. We had composite parts for all the structural components. Over time, we had, fiberglass, but mostly fiberglass parts that we were doing heat and cure in place. But we had ultimately carbon fiber spars and things like that, which from a process standpoint are very complex. But then you've got all the internal components. You've got the avionics. You've got all the design and development of those, plus the integration of those into the airframe and continually the software. It's a very demanding process. But with, interestingly, a group from different backgrounds, automotive background and that logic, plus all of the finance and, the inventory management and the finance background that we needed to really make this thing scale. We were able to bring it together. It feels, when I look back on it, it feels like a small miracle, but or a lot of small miracles, but 10 years of incredibly hard work to get it to the point where ultimately we sold it in 2011.
Now, when Cirrus came along, I think that was, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it came along at roughly the same time where this idea of fractional jet ownership came along, because it used to be, I'm 51 years old, and you never heard about any of these companies really until the last maybe 20, 25 years or so. It was either maybe you were a single engine pilot, maybe you had a twin, or you're flying commercial, or you're just super rich, which was a very small subset of people that you had to jet. But then all of a
Right.
sudden now we've got this idea almost of I don't want to say ride sharing, but something very similar to that hit the aviation space and the jet space. What
Right.
when did that transition really occur in the industry?
Well, that transition started in the, yeah, as you're right, in the sort of the 2003, 4, 5 time frame is when you started to see a lot more of that starting to come to bear. The early years of Cirrus coincided with that, where we had a tremendous number of people who wanted the mobility of general aviation, but either didn't feel comfortable in smaller airplanes or didn't have any exposure to them. Even in the early days, about a third of the people we sold to were not even general aviation pilots. They didn't have their pilot license yet, but they understood the value to themselves and to their business interests and their own personal time, schedules, and the ability to save time and get back to business, as it were. They're kind of all both personal and business mixes were their logic, but they understood the value of trying to of using aviation and the great infrastructure that we have in the United States to leverage their time. And so we had a huge number of people coming to us that were new to the industry, and as well as people that were, upgrading from, Cessna products or other products that they had out there. And the interesting part about the development was we went quickly with Cirrus from the round dial instruments to the flat panel displays with, XM radio, real time weather, embedded terrain awareness, so you could actually see like a video game, all through your through the instrumentation, what you were encountering with all the color coding and those kinds of things to make sure that you were safe. You could see other traffic in there, and so those developments opened general aviation to a wide variety of people that never thought either it was safe or thought that they could be pilots because it was very technical. And the reality is it just made it that much easier to fly. A combination of how we built the flight controls and integrated, the throttle, fuel mix into the throttle, so you had, a few less things to do as a pilot, made it just that much easier. If you wrap that in, a composite airframe or a fiberglass airframe with tremendous number of safety features that people don't even think about, most people think about Cirrus and they think about the parachute. But the parachute is, it's an important safety feature, but you use the parachute when you've already lost control, when the situation is a little more dire. The reality is that most of the safety features, including very large, flat panel displays that give you perspective while you're with your peripheral vision, that you can fly and you can fly more comfortably and relaxed and talk to the people near you without having as intense a focus on the instrumentation. But importantly, in the composite and fiberglass structure, landing gear that folds up and distributes energy away from the occupants, a roll cage and a structure that could deform and reform without collapsing on the occupants made hard landings and other incidents a lot more, in fact, very survivable. And those kinds of things are what contributed tremendously to the safety record. At that same time, you saw, so as people became more comfortable with that, they started to say, look, I can fly. And really anybody could fly these airplanes. You just had to spend a little bit of time and focus on it. But it was coinciding with other people deciding, hey, I don't necessarily want to fly, but I want to gain the advantage through fractional of this, whether it's a larger jet or a smaller airplane, like even like a Cessna or a Cirrus. The reality is we had a lot of people coming into the market in that period of time after kind of the 30-year hiatus or 25-year period where that market had kind of steadily declined or been relatively flat. So that, both that kind of came at the same time, both of those two eventualities, and it brought a lot of more people into the market. And then as you flew a Cirrus, you could step up into bigger and bigger airplanes and either fly them yourselves or participate as you would, but more on an owner or a fractional basis.
Now, who was the first mover in that fractional jet space? And to those that are listening that might not really know what we're talking about and the difference between that, talk a little bit too about what it means to own a jet outright,
Yeah,
whether we're
right.
talking about a Challenger or we're talking about Global Express or something like that, versus which obviously massive price
Yeah,
point differences. It could be a $2 million aircraft, it could be a $70 million aircraft.
right.
But talk about that, and then now you've got this idea of fractional ownership, which is relatively new, or even
Yeah.
full charter. Like give us an idea of what's happening right now in that space.
Well, a simple matter is, as you say, at one point, the only way to participate in ownership was to own an airplane outright, or find your own way to fund it with a partner or a buddy or two. But with fractional, NetJets really came into the marketplace. FlexJet came into the marketplace, and the reality is those guys made it infinitely more attainable to have a fraction of an airplane. In their case, tax laws and ownership laws and the development of those help that, because you could depreciate an asset where you didn't necessarily own a specific portion of a tail or things like that. You could buy an eighth of an airplane or a 16th of an airplane, and that with that would come a commensurate number of hours for you to fly and meet your emission needs. But you didn't have to worry about the maintenance or the upkeep of that airplane, the crew, and all of those things. So that made it really opened the availability for people who had the financial means, but maybe didn't have the knowledge or expertise or desire to deal with the complexity of airplane ownership. And that's migrated to today, like JetLinks. JetLinks makes it, no matter how you want to participate in private aviation, if you just want to fly, you call JetLinks. There's a lot of other good providers you can call too. You can charter a jet today much more easily than ever in history. Furthermore, if you want to have some of the tax and financial benefits of it, you can participate at the fractional level, and you can own a portion of the airplane, and maybe that gives you 75 or 100 or 150 hours a year, depending on what your fraction is, and that's a gracious plenty for most people. But then you can participate all the way up through aircraft ownership today. But if you want to own an airplane and have someone else manage the entire thing, from crew to maintenance to all your subscriptions to fuel and everything, that's what companies like JetLinks do. And really, you can participate in any shade of gray today in general aviation, thanks to the development of fractional models from big jets down, and the availability of modern technology from smaller four-seat piston and single-engine jets coming up from the bottom.
Let's talk about the economics of that, because if you look at, say, like a Gulfstream G650, I think it's like a 60,
right.
$70 million airplane.
Right.
You buy that airplane, and let's say you are in the wealth category where you can afford that. I mean, your maintenance upkeep on a plane like that, it's got to be what? I mean, $3-4 million a year.
Yeah, $3 to $4 million a year on an airplane that high, and at the lower end, there aren't many single engine jets made anymore. But the reality is the mid-sized jet, like a Cessna Citation XLS, workhorse of an airplane, kind of the SUV of airplanes out there, and that's going to cost you $4, $5, $6 million, $7 million to buy, depending on what you're buying. And on the used market, you can spend a little bit more for that on the new market, but then that's costing you far less per year, hundreds of thousands of dollars, maybe into the $1 million of dollars to maintain. And that's where you can do that on a fractional basis, or you can do that on a whole basis, and engage with that at whatever level you're comfortable with.
So there used to be, so back in the day, I do not right now, but when at one point in my history, I did own a single engine piston aircraft. And the thinking back then was, if you're flying more than maybe 150 hours a year, that it would make sense to start to consider maybe buy the Cessna 172 or the 182 or something like that. Is there a cutoff? If, let's say, you're looking at that $5-6 million citation and maybe $1 million of total cost coming in to run this thing, is there a cutoff where it makes sense to buy this thing? And then I'm guessing what you guys can do is help manage that, or do you want to get in and just be a fractional owner, or just charter the plane when you need it? Where's that cutoff?
Right. Well, interestingly, there used to be kind of a cutoff where you think, you're going to fly 150 hours or 150 hours, it might make sense to own it, because at that point you begin to lower your cost per hour. But given the number of options today, you can own an airplane and get all the financial benefits of, let's say there's bonus depreciation or modified accelerated depreciation. You can get all the financial benefits of that at much lower levels of your own participation. And that's why people come to JetLinks, where the unique thing about JetLinks is we manage other people's airplanes. We don't own our own. We manage other people's airplanes. But every one of them has a different requirement. They might want 0 hours to fly it themselves, and they just want to own it as an asset, or they want 250 hours they want to fly themselves. But whatever the incremental availability of that airplane is, the consistent thread among our clients is they want JetLinks to charter that airplane for its other available hours. So they come to JetLinks for a couple primary reasons. Really, we are the best in the world at generating charter revenue for aircraft owners that offsets their costs. So not only are they getting the financial benefits, the tax benefits of owning that, but then when they're using it, we're managing every aspect of the airplane, the maintenance, the crew, the fuel, the all aspects of their subscriptions and their costs. And they're getting the benefit of our huge scale on those costs and lowering their costs. But then when they're not using it, we're utilizing that airplane to make them money to lower their cost further. So it lowers their cost overall. So we have owners that want 0 hours. We have owners that frankly, don't want to charter their airplane at all. We're very good at managing what's called a Part 91 airplane, where they just use it for their own purposes. But the vast majority of our business is Part 135 charter business, where an owner owns an airplane and they want to use it sometimes, and they don't want to worry about it because we're experts at it. And then when they don't use it, they want to make sure it's well utilized and not just sitting idle.
Yeah, I might be very wrong on this, but your business model then it's contrasting in a massive way, say with NetJets, and NetJets owns their fleet. Am I right about that?
Yeah, like a NetJets and a FlexJet, they all own their fleets, and that's fundamentally different. So ours is an asset-light business model. We're profitable. We make a lot of money for our clients, and we make money for ourselves. We're very profitable. We're asset-light. But what we focus on then is our buying power and our sophistication, managing crew and maintenance and subscriptions and fuel and all of those things. And then we allow to take all the worries off of an owner. And then we have a couple thousand Jet Card members and charter customers that all they don't own any airplane, they just want to fly. And so their relationship with us is they just want to fly when they want to fly. And guess what airplanes they use? We use those owners' airplanes to fly those others around, and we share that money then with the owner to defray their costs. So it's the most cost-effective way to own an airplane and keep the utilization of that airplane high and not have to worry about all the ramifications of maintenance and crew and all those things, all the regulatory things that we're experts at.
Now let's look at the end users for you guys, kind of all the way down. So let's start with the guy that I'm guessing really for the depreciation, for some of the tax advantages, just wants to buy this working asset, not fly it, wants to buy this working asset that he sends to you guys to get that bird out there flying.
Right.
Tell me about that guy. Tell me about the benefits to him.
Well, the benefits to him are, look, he literally can, at the drop of a hat, if he ever needs to fly, we'll make sure he gets there. But on his airplane, we're going to maximize the revenue by having that available to us. We're going to maximize the revenue and really minimize his hourly costs of owning that airplanes. And it's pretty rare, but we offset a big proportion of his costs in owning that. That's a situation where the owner has given us maximum flexibility with the airplane schedule, maximum flexibility for how we charter it and those kinds of things. So you can genuinely get your financial benefits of that airplane, own the asset, come to us if you ever want to fly, and you can fly on any airplane that we have, but optimize your financial picture on that airplane and not have to deal with the regulatory environment, the safety considerations that you have to go through, the costs of at scale that we gain really afford them, a lot lower fuel costs than they would otherwise, a lot lower, crew costs, not having to manage the crew, not having to manage all of the training and aspects related to that. So it's really a hands-off. You could make it a business venture then, if you will, as long as you have the means to deduct those, the cost of that asset. It's a terrific financial asset to offset your tax liability and other things.
Now let's talk about the guy that's out there and is flying a lot for business, maybe flying a lot personally. Right. Why are they going to your model, say, versus a FlexJet or a NetJet? Why does it make more sense for them to talk to JetLinks?
Right. Well, that's a lot closer type of decision for them. We have great competitors in NetJets and FlexJet, and they have the advantage of a consistent fleet across their enterprise. Now, in our case, you get a flexible fleet. As the advantage of coming to us is if you only need a light jet, you book a light jet. And the reality is that light jet is a lot less expensive to operate. You can schedule a mid-sized jet, a super mid, or a heavy jet, depending on what you need. So you can come to us to get any size jet for the appropriate mission and optimize your cost that way. If they're flying a lot, they're very busy. They have other things to worry about than the regulatory headaches and all the costs. And so our scale delivers that cost. But I think what we also deliver is we have the best safety record in the business. The reality is we have the highest safety rating among all three safety ratings agencies around the globe. And what you get with us is an incredible safety record, an incredible commitment to safety, and all the innovation and the technology and the things that go into safety, that I mentioned it earlier, that I've benefited from starting my career around flight simulators and flight operations at a commercial plane operator. Those are coming to bear in the way we run our business today, and the sophistication of our safety, and our track record shows it. We have a zero incident history, and so those are the things you get with us, is not just pilots and scale on cost. You get the sophistication of a team who really runs aviation every day, and safety that delivers day in and day out the safest solution you can operate.
Now, you're coming, obviously, as we talked about in the beginning, from this really deep logistics background, and which I imagine is really important because you got to do a couple of things here. You're not managing a unified fleet. I think it was Southwest that very famously just would buy the 737 and be done with it.
Right.
So you've got a lot of different owners. You got a lot of different kinds of airplanes going all different places around the country. How is that process to manage that? Because you're managing to different technical things and everything else.
Well, just think of the maintenance alone. So we have subject matter experts on every airplane type. Of course, on some airplane types, we have more airplanes, a greater number of airplanes than others. But we manage 22, 23 different types of airplanes. And so we're subject matter experts, and it takes some investment, takes great training, great investment to manage that. So on a maintenance standpoint, the breadth of our knowledge is terrific. As a result of that, though, our relationships with the third-party MROs that do this work are also excellent. So we're able to tap into, no matter what your airplane is, to the best experts for that airplane. And so that's one component of it. The logistics side of managing the fleet as it relates to moving it around the United States or Europe or Asia, about 10% of our business is international. And so we obviously do the Caribbean quite a lot. We do Mexico quite a lot. We do Europe and Asia at an increasing level today. But the vast majority of our business is here in the United States, where we have operations in 22 different cities. We have offices in 22 different cities. The truth is we visit 360 airports a year all over the US and the world. So it's quite a diverse operation. But to manage the logistics of that, we have not only technical or technological investments that help us plan those the movements of the fleet, but the reality is it still takes human involvement to figure out the best way to move those airplanes around, the most optimum way to move those things around. A lot of companies have tried to create software that will do this. There's no magic formula. It takes a lot of thought about where your charter customers might be, where your jet card members might be, and how to optimize, so that you have the fewest empty legs where you're trying to get airplanes to them and serve their flights. It's quite an effort that's a combination of, we have a number of different technology systems that flow into it. And, I feel very fortunate. I don't know how one would do this job without having a lot of IT background. I've written a lot of software. I've dealt with a lot of different systems. And, we have to deploy technology, and we're not only streamlining our technology strategy, but digging deeper and building both the data and the process infrastructure that we need to leverage AI, which will become an increasing component of helping us codify these decisions that we make, both on the front end of the business about how to manage trips, but more importantly in the back office about how to manage that fleet, as you say, and the logistics of that. So it'll be an important tool to help make sure that we close gaps and get more efficient over time.
Now, how quickly do you think some of that adoption, if it's not happening already, of AI in your business is coming online?
Well, it's certainly within the next. It will start to hit on the. I'll say for our people who manage that fleet, probably within the next 12 to 18 months. We are already using it as we build the underpinnings on our technology strategy. So we've kind of stripped the technology strategy back down to the core and rebuilt our data architecture so all of our applications could use it more efficiently, as opposed to that data being out in the applications. And then we've optimized processes. We're optimizing processes in workflow with workflow tools, and we're optimizing our applications and the way they utilize that data. And right on top of that, we'll stack AI. But we use AI today to optimize that data structure and to optimize our workflow at the same time we're optimizing the applications. So we're actually using it to create the foundation to use it on a greater scale.
Now, looking under the hood of your business model, because as you mentioned, you are asset light, and the technology that's coming on board is going to disrupt every single business, my own included. Do you think because you're asset light, because you've got it's less overhead, for lack of a better term, is that freeing up capital versus your competitors to really dive deep into the tech, or is this something everybody's doing at a pretty uniform level?
Well, no, as a matter of fact, that's a very important observation. Our tech development, even as we see it today, the things we're deploying on the client relations side and how we manage trips chronologically from the time we first encounter a customer and they indicate a desire for a trip, all the way through executing that trip and the feedback about whether it went well and the permanent kind of improvements to our process. We are making big investments in technology. We're already seeing leapfrogging of our competition as it relates to things that impact our owners and things that impact our members and our charter customers. Our owners, in the first 18 months I was here, didn't see a lot of change in the way we help them manage their airplane. But now we've rolled out entirely new digital, entirely new owner reporting system. And that owner reporting system allows them to, with dynamic links, automatically cascade down all the way to any level of detail they want, whether it's crew or maintenance or the meal that the crew ate and the literally the details about that and the receipt and all the information that an owner would like to know about, and really handle their own accounting the way they want with the detail that they would like. And the members are also getting a new member summary. And as we build on that technology through improved client portals, owner portal and members portal, which will be the same portal, more and more information, more and more value can be delivered to them. And that, not only are we finding ourselves leapfrogging, especially with owner reporting, what our competitors are doing, we have a very aggressive and rapid development of that. I think that our owners and our members and our charter customers will see as tremendous value over the course of time.
Now, I won't ask you to speak directly about any of your competitors, but traditionally, travel, and I would imagine private aviation is a somewhat cyclical business.
Right.
Not having that fleet that you have to own and make the payments on and everything else, how much better do you think that puts you in a position to have durability through bad economic cycles?
Well, it makes us very durable, but let's be candid, it has advantages and disadvantages, right? The reality is we have great competitors, and truthfully, in this business, we work with all of our competitors as customers. We all work together in a way, and yet we compete vigorously as well. So we have great competitors that have advantages. They might have as I say, a consistent fleet, and the client knows what airplane they're going to get on that time. Whereas we have a diverse fleet, and the diverse fleet has its advantages and its disadvantages. So some of the clients they prefer, and we kind of self-select a subset of the airplanes that they would like to have, and we can do that easily for them if they prefer to fly on certain types of airplanes. We make that possible, but it makes our job, not only are we able to manage any airplane for an owner and handle all this complexity, the maintenance and all these things, but it makes our fleet diverse, and the owner trip experience relies much more heavily on our relationship with that owner, our technology, ironically, that helps us at any time of day or night know that if an owner has a flight, no matter who is on from a client relation standpoint, we have technology that brings a member summary right to our people with all the preferences and all of their the things that they like and their history about how their last flight and several flights have gone, and that kind of service becomes much more important, and that relationship becomes much more important in our model. So while we are asset light and it does afford us a lot of strength through economic cycles, it has, you got to think about the advantages and the disadvantages. And so I'm very open about that. But what we do really well is manage a diverse fleet, and that's the business model. And the other players have their business model, and it's quite a bit different than ours, even though most people think of them as charter operators, if you will, Part 135 operators.
Now let's talk about accessibility here to the user, just an end user. You're not going to be in the business of owning the aircraft and looking to offset some costs. You just want to get out there and fly. At what point, if someone is listening, whether they're a business owner or whether they're just a person that's on the road a lot, when does it start to make sense for them to consider, fractional ownership or a subscription-based plan? What's that cutoff for someone, and how accessible is it? Because I think some people listening to this might be surprised at how accessible, quite frankly, private jet travel can be.
Right. Well, it's incredibly accessible. So let's say you want to fly 2 trips a year, just to be crazy, and let's say it's 2 hours one way, so it's 8 hours a year. The reality is we do that very efficiently today. So you can sign up with us. All you have to do is you can choose to put money on deposit or not put money on deposit. Put money on deposit if you want a slightly lower rate. But the reality is you just access these, a company like JetLinks very readily. And it's much more cost effective. What people don't realize is the time that they save, their ability to take any number of passengers for that one fixed price. It becomes very close to the costs of an airline type trip, depending on, especially given where airline prices have been, than people realize. And so the ease with which you can get to the airplane on your schedule, we never forget your bag. We take care of literally everything door to door from you. And frankly, we can take care of your cars, your hotels, and anything else. And so the ease of it and the financial accessibility of it become simple for even those that are flying 1 or 2 trips a year. And that's all the way up to, and then the benefit just, compounds as the more you fly. So you think about the dollars per hour, because we offer a fixed rate product. We also offer a charter service, which is market-based. But our fixed rate product, if the airplane breaks, if you schedule a trip and the airplane has a mechanical, that's our problem to solve, and it doesn't cost you a dime. You pay what we quoted you up front, and that's it. It's our job to get another airplane, if that case, or fix that airplane and get you where you need to go. So that's the advantage of it. You have no worries, and that's what makes it incredibly accessible. Is not only the ability to put, whatever bags you want on there and whatever people you want on the airplane, but for a fixed price, but then us handling the time component that you save. You need to really value your time. Anybody that values their time or the ability to take the family pets, I can't tell you how many people, it's a massive percentage of our flights where the families get to take their pets and the grandparents get to come along, or the grandkids get to go with the grandparents. And so that extended family excursion and the trip then becomes part of the joy even more than, if you really love to fly and you love to go to airlines or airports and things like that, it can be, maybe it's the exhilaration of international travel. But I'm telling you, when you fly, as you just said at the beginning, when you get on a private jet and you have none of the wait time up front, you have the service and the sophistication of what we offer, and the whole family can be together. your friends can be together and you can talk, and the journey becomes really a part of the trip, whether it's business or personal. It's amazing experience. And given the fact that for relatively low prices today, with the sophistication of the charter market and with companies like JetLinks with jet cards, and even some of our competitors that are in the fractional space that also offer some charter, the reality is chartering a jet, doing it with a jet card, is very, very cost effective today.
And the thing too, what's amazing is if you're lucky enough to get up in these birds every once in a while, you're going point to point.
Right.
You're bypassing the hubs. You're not like I'm a
Right.
Delta guide primarily.
Yeah.
But I'm going through Salt Lake, or I'm going through Atlanta, or I'm going through Detroit, or I'm going through Minneapolis,
Right.
but the ability to bypass those hubs and show up at the airport 20, 30 minutes before this thing takes off and you land and off you go. It's the time savings and just the headache. It's truly incredible.
Yeah, I think about the way I travel, and I have 22 cities. I try to hit every city every quarter, plus my travel that I need to do for business otherwise that aren't necessarily in our cities. And so I'm able to, depending on what I'm trying to do, depending on how long I want to stay there, I can hit 2 or 3 cities in a day and be home for dinner. Now, it's an early start, right? But the reality is I get out there and I accomplish so much more. And whether it was Cirrus Aircraft and that same lot realization, when you think of the value of your time and your ability to stay in your own routine, the ability to be home with your family for dinner, and the impact on your wife and your spouse and your children, it's tremendous. And if you value your time that way, what you realize when you get into is it's less about the cost of flying. It's the tremendous return that you get on it with respect to your own time, whether you're taking your whole family with you or your team with you. I can't tell you how many times in these cities I've taken my team with me. The value of that plus the value of your time is just a tremendous payback. So people focus on sometimes, they think it's going to be expensive. Well, it's not very expensive on a per person basis. And then the return that you get as individuals or as a team is phenomenal.
Yeah, I think it's one of the most exciting things that's happening in the world, not just in my business, but also in businesses everywhere. Is technology is really democratizing so many of these different tools that are out there, and it's incredible. Somebody wants to learn more about JetLinks, what you guys do, and how you can possibly help them, whether they're an owner or an end user. How do they find you?
Well, it's pretty easy to connect with us right on our website. Fill out a form there, and we'll get the right person to you. The truth is, we're a high touch business. They can call me. They can email at me at brent.wouters@jetlinks.com, and we really just try to take care of them. You'll find us, our contact information easily online, or you can use my name and I'll take care of you. I love to meet new clients and prospects, and I love to take care of them because that helps me see how we handle things through and through. And I'm pretty proud of our team. So find me online, and we'll get right to you.
All right. That was great. Brent, thank you for joining Brent today in this conversation.
You look confusing, but
No.
No. It was a really fascinating and interesting conversation. And the other Brent, my regular Brent, thank you for bringing Brent on. That was good. That was great. For people who listen to the conversation who maybe want to have a conversation with you, reach out to you and talk about some other things and see what you have to offer. How did they get a hold of you, Brent?
Yeah, phone number here in the office is 602-255-0555. Website, tws.finance, has pretty much every conceivable way to get a hold of me, and also pretty active on LinkedIn.
Yeah, it's great. In all of the contact information for those of you who are listening will be in the show notes for both Brents, so you don't have to worry about writing them down right now or trying to memorize them. The other thing you could do, though, that takes little effort or energy is if you're not a subscriber, hit the follow button, become a subscriber. That way, every time Brent drops a new episode, you'll be notified. You can give it a listen. And I promise you, they're all as interesting as this one. And so you'd be doing yourself a favor. The thing I would ask is if you like this podcast and you enjoy it, tell people about it. Word of mouth promotion is a very effective tool, and we would really very much appreciate it. So until next time, I'm Bill Tucker on behalf of Brent and everybody at TWS. Thank you for taking the time to listen, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you for listening to Smart Money Simplified. Have questions about topics covered during the show? Visit our website at www.smartmoneysimplified.com or give us a call at 602-255-0555. Don't forget to click the follow button to be notified when new episodes become available. The information covered and posted represents the views and opinions of the guests and does not necessarily represent the views or opinions of the wealth stewards or concurrent investment advisors. The content has been made available for informational and educational purposes only. The content is not intended to be a substitute for professional investing advice. Always seek the advice of your financial advisor or other qualified financial service provider with any questions you may have regarding your investment planning.